Hi, I'm Brian FitzGerald, and I'm coming to you from the Mid-America Air Museum in Liberal, Kansas. This is one of the largest museums in the country, and I particularly like it because of its wide variety of aircraft. For instance, if you look over here over my left shoulder, up against the ceiling, there's a Rotec Rally. That's the two-seat version. That was popular back in the 80s. They're not made anymore, but it was a pretty popular ultralight at the time. Here above and behind me is a KR-1 kit plane, little speedster. They're real popular still. And then back against the ceiling and up is a F-104 Starfighter, which used to be in the Air Force inventory. I think they still fly them around the world in other air forces. Now you might ask yourself, well, what do these all have to do with powered parachutes? And frankly, nothing directly. But since they're airplanes, and I like airplanes, and I'm sure you do too, I figured this was a good place to start this tape.
Presenting A Beginner's Guide to Powered Parachutes. Featuring Morrow. Randy Jackson. And Ken Kelly. Produced by Brian FitzGerald.
If I was going to name this area of the museum, I'd call this Classics Corner. Above me is one of the early hang gliders. It's called a Delta Wing Kite. I used to see a lot of them back in the 70s. Right here on my left and behind me is a real classic, the Beech Stagger Wing. Now over here on the right is another real classic. This is a Cessna 195, and this is particularly special because it was owned by Dwayne Wallace himself. Now I'd like to introduce to you next one of my friends from the Kansas City area. His name is Ben Morrow. He's retired from the FAA, and he and his wife have a business in that area selling powered parachutes and training people in powered parachutes. Here's Ben Morrow.
We're going to do a takeoff, then he's going to go out and play around a little bit, come back for a landing.
Ben is working with a student of his named Leroy Walker at an airfield near Leavenworth, Kansas. The sky is completely overcast, the humidity is high, and extremely rare for this region, there is a total lack of wind.
Okay, the canopy is required a certain amount of speed through the air to pressurize properly. Canopy pressurizes from the center and works its way outward. That's one of the reasons you'll see us watching the end cells. Those are the cells on the very end of the canopy. Be sure they're inflated. Normally with a 10-mile-an-hour wind, something like that, that's very steady, the minute the canopy comes up, it's just like you're rolling at 10 miles an hour on your takeoff. And the canopy will pressurize very rapidly and it stays pretty much directly behind you. When it's calm like this, the canopy will do a little bit of rolling and it doesn't pressurize as rapidly. You have to accelerate to your 10 to 12 miles an hour before the canopy really starts to inflate. He's going to turn on, he's crosswind, then he's going to turn final, and I'm going to try to bring him in just a little higher rate of descent than we did last time. This is land. This is keep everything as it is, power setting the same. Reduce power, increase power, kill, hit the kill switch, shut everything down. This is the flare. This is takeoff. Go ahead and go to full power and take off. Right now he's just going to make a couple of passes. He's playing a little bit. I believe this is Leroy's 5th flight. He's really doing quite well. What he's done as a student when he's out here practicing, he has found out what RPM setting will maintain a level attitude for him, level flight. And when he turns final, then he'll reduce that RPM about 300 RPM, something in that neighborhood. And this should give him a pretty decent rate of descent. And he will hold that all the way to the point where he's going to do his flare, which is usually going to be a standard rate of descent about 4 to 5 feet off the ground. We're probably going to have a rate of descent 200 to 300 feet a minute. I'd like to get him just a little faster than that this time to work on the flare. Okay, he's coming down pretty good now.
Why do you want to have a slow or a fast?
Okay.
That was a little fast, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us what happened.
Okay. All right, the bounce you saw there, he actually flared and stopped just a little bit high. And that was, he just dropped in about a foot and a half, 2 feet. Nothing at all serious. In the spring gear, that's where he got his bounce. Okay, you notice there was no problem whatsoever. When we first start with a student, and it doesn't make a difference whether they've flown other aircraft or whether they've never flown anything, we start with a 3-hour at least ground school. Covers all the rules, how the canopy flies, the aerodynamics of the parachute, safety procedures, emergency procedures, the different things you have to know. Then we come out to the field and we'll do a first solo flight. And that's with the radio, excuse me, and hand signals to back it up. And what I'm doing now is I'm watching him to see if he's getting ready, if he's going to land this time. If he is, I need to keep an eye on him. Okay, I'm telling him leave it just like it is and come down at that rate. Okay, start your flare. There he goes, and see how it sort of slowed him down? Okay, now we'll send him back up. As soon as the canopy's completely inflated, both end cells are open. Both end cells are open, everything looked good, so I sent him back around. Anyway, we bring the student out field, we set in the powered parachute, we go through the different maneuvers, procedures that he's going to use. We'll send up a helium balloon a time or two to check all the winds, because we want the student to remember that the canopy's up 35 or 40 feet above the ground. A lot of times it could be calm on the ground and there can be a pretty good crosswind at the canopy altitude. Then we'll go ahead and hook the radios up and we send them out for the first solo. What we usually do, we'll have them take off, climb to about 300 feet, and then do some turns both directions. We kind of let the student play a little bit, kind of get the feel of the machine, get comfortable, do a few climbs and descents, see how the throttle works. And then once they're ready to come back in, we'll fly them down the runway at usually about 100 feet. Let them go back out, circle a little bit, play around, bring them back in again at about 50 feet, fly them down the runway. This gives them practice maintaining the runway heading. And then we'll bring them in for a landing. What I'm doing is I'm going to tell him to decrease power a little bit more right now. Okay, he's doing real well. Each time he comes around, I'm having him reduce power a little bit more and get a faster rate of descent, and then he's braking it with the flare. The flare position, that pulls the trailing edge of the canopy down, and it actually sort of like flaps on a fixed wing. It creates some drag, slows the canopy down, also a little extra lift. Remember again today, he doesn't have any headwind to help him. So this is about as tricky as he's ever going to get it, as far as getting the canopy to handle correctly. It's highly unlikely that you would lose power, but it does happen. Fuel starvation, something like that. You treat it the same as you would a fixed wing aircraft. You just let the canopy acts as the wing, and you just glide down. Your rate of descent will be a little higher than normal without the engine, but just prior to touchdown, you do the flare maneuver, which pulls the back of the canopy down, creates a little extra lift and drag, and you basically will be able to stop. These units are all tested at the factories to do an engine out descent at full gross and be able to flare and not do any damage to the machine or the person. Okay, I just told him to go around again and let's bring it back in for a landing. He's done close to an hour's worth of work this morning, and that's about all I want him to do at this stage. Okay. Oh, nice touchdown, nice touchdown. Okay, he did a real nice touchdown. He's going to collapse the canopy. Okay, not enough breeze this morning to even move the canopy back off of the airframe. Doesn't hurt anything. That's the reason he shuts the engine off prior to touchdown so that the prop's not turning. Prop turning tends to eat suspension lines, and did a real nice job. Real nice job. Did you see the? Did you get the feel of the flare?
Yeah,
and how it'll stop you?
It's starting to feel better.
Yeah, yeah. At this stage, it's nice for the instructor because the student needs the practice of picking everything up and getting it sorted out and packing it. On the first flight or two, that's what the instructor has to help with. But at this stage, I can kind of relax and let him do the work.
Hey, what brought you to this sport? What attracted to you?
Well, I've always wanted to fly ever since I've been a little kid. And the price of airplanes are kind of a little bit high, and this is one I can afford to fly.
Now, there's other ways to fly recreational that are inexpensive also. What pulled you to the powered parachute?
Well, my first airplane ride was my first parachute jump, and I liked that except for landing was kind of hard. Kind of gave me shin splints, so I've always been attracted to parachutes and skydiving, stuff like that, and this is kind of the best of both worlds.
How long did it take you to get to the solo point?
I soloed about 2 years ago with a guy named Hops in Walkerton, Indiana, and I really liked it. And then I moved back to the St. Joe, Missouri area, and I looked up, found Ben here on the internet, and called him up, and next thing I know, I was ordering a paraplane.
They're putting line sleeves on now. Now the line sleeves really serve only one function, and that's to protect the suspension lines. Keeps it from getting dirty, wet, snagged on something. It really extends the life of them. It also keeps them from getting tangled. We used to always daisy chain the suspension lines, and now with the line protectors, we don't have to do that. It just keeps everything nice and neat when you put it in the bag. The other thing that they're going to be doing, this is a fairly large canopy bag, and the grass it's not too wet out here right now, so the canopy will be fairly dry, but you never pack a wet canopy. You can get mildew real quick, destroys the strength of the canopy material. We like to use the larger canopy bags so that it's not crammed in real tight and you're getting creases and things like that. The Navy Department did a lot of work with canopies over the years. The original powered parachute canopies are slightly modified. They are a rectangular ram air, very, very similar to the chutes that the military uses for dropping cargo. A little smaller. This canopy is what we call a 500 square foot canopy. It's the area is 500 square feet. The largest canopy right now that I'm aware of it's used any kind of regularity is a 550 or 550 square foot. You'll see on some of the units like the Paraflyer, the small unit that single person, it actually has a 315 square foot canopy, so it's getting down fairly small. Most of your skydiver canopies are around the 200 square foot or smaller. All right. Okay. You notice with this unit we have an autopilot that steers the unit directly to the hangar.
Now that Leroy's lesson is over, Ben will discuss with us his business and his thoughts about powered parachutes.